A 9-year-old girl sleeps peacefully on a commercial flight until the captain's desperate announcement shatters the silence. Is there any fighter pilot on board? What happens next will shock everyone. The child they dismissed as just another passenger is about to reveal a secret that defies belief and saves 200 lives. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. It was a Wednesday evening in early September when 9-year-old Maya Johnson boarded Flight 451 from Los Angeles to New York with her grandmother. The Boeing 777 was packed with business travelers heading home after a long week, families returning from vacations, and tired passengers who just wanted to sleep through the 5-hour flight. Maya clutched her worn teddy bear named Captain and followed her grandmother Ruth down the narrow aisle to their seats in row 23. She was small for her age, with dark braids tied with colorful ribbons, bright, curious eyes, and a serious expression that made her look older than 9 years. Window seat, just like you wanted, Ruth said with a warm smile, helping Maya buckle her seatbelt. At 72 years old, Ruth had raised Maya since she was 3, after the accident that took Maya's parents. She was the only family Maya had left, and she protected the little girl fiercely while also encouraging her unusual interests and remarkable intelligence. Maya pressed her face against the window, watching the ground crew loading luggage and preparing the aircraft for departure. She noticed everything with the sharp attention of someone who understood what she was seeing. The way the ground crew signaled to each other, the fuel truck disconnecting from the wing, the pushback tug positioning itself at the nose gear. Most 9-year-olds would just see busy people and big machines. Maya saw a carefully choreographed operation where every detail mattered. Excited about seeing Aunt Caroline? Ruth asked, pulling out a book from her bag. Maya nodded but didn't take her eyes off the window. Grandma, they haven't finished the pre-flight inspection on the right engine. See that panel? It's still open. They need to close it before we taxi. Ruth had long since stopped being surprised by the things Maya noticed. I'm sure they'll take care of it, sweetie. Why don't you try to sleep? It's a long flight and you were up early this morning. The flight attendants moved through the cabin checking seatbelts and overhead bins. One of them, a young woman named Jessica, paused at their row and smiled at Maya. What a cute teddy bear. Does he have a name? Captain, Maya said seriously. He's a pilot, Jessica laughed. A pilot bear? That's adorable. Are you going to be a pilot when you grow up? Maya looked at her with those serious eyes. I already am one. Jessica's smile became more indulgent, the way adults smile at children who say imaginative things. Well, that's wonderful. Maybe you can fly the plane for us tonight. She moved on to the next row, already forgetting the strange little girl. Ruth squeezed Maya's hand gently. Remember what we talked about, sweetheart? Not everyone understands. Most people won't believe you even if you tell them the truth. I know, Grandma, Maya whispered. It's our secret. It has to be. The engine started with a low rumble that grew to a roar. Maya felt the vibration through her seat and smiled slightly. She knew that sound intimately, though she had never heard it from a passenger seat before. The captain's voice came over the intercom, smooth and professional. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Robert Mitchell. We've been cleared for takeoff and should have you in New York in approximately 5 hours. Weather looks good along the route. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. The aircraft pushed back from the gate and began taxiing toward the runway. Maya watched everything through the window, tracking their route, noting the other aircraft waiting in line, calculating taxi time based on the distance to the departure runway. When they finally turned onto the runway and the engine spooled up to takeoff power, she closed her eyes and felt the acceleration push her back into her seat. The nose lifted, the main gear left the ground, and they were flying. Once they reached cruising altitude and the seatbelt sign turned off, Maya finally relaxed. The flight attendants began their service, offering drinks and snacks. Ruth ordered ginger ale for both of them, and Maya sipped hers while looking out at the darkening sky. The sun was setting behind them, painting the clouds below in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful in a way that never got old, no matter how many times you saw it. Why don't you sleep for a while? Ruth suggested. We won't arrive until after 11 and you'll be tired. Maya nodded and curled up in her seat, hugging Captain close. She pulled the thin airline blanket over herself and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing slow and steady, completely peaceful. She dreamed of flying, as she always did, but in her dreams, she wasn't a passenger. She was in the cockpit where she belonged, hands on the controls, Sky all around her. 2 hours into the flight, everything changed. Maya woke suddenly to the sound of alarm in a flight attendant's voice. She blinked in confusion, momentarily disoriented. The cabin lights were dim for the evening flight, and most passengers were sleeping or watching movies on their screens. But something was wrong. She could feel it the way a sailor feels a storm coming. "Is there a doctor on board?" A flight attendant was calling out, moving quickly down the aisle. "We need a doctor immediately." Ruth stirred beside Maya, woken by the commotion. "What's happening?" Maya unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, ignoring her grandmother's protest. She could see flight attendants gathered near the front of the cabin, their faces tight with worry. Passengers were starting to wake up, sensing the tension, whispering to each other. A man in a business suit stood up and identified himself as a doctor, hurrying toward the front of the plane. Then the captain's voice came over the intercom, and there was something in his tone that made Maya's blood run cold. It wasn't the smooth, professional voice from before. This was strained, urgent, barely controlled fear. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical emergency in the cockpit. If there is a qualified pilot on board, any pilot with commercial or military experience, please identify yourself to the flight attendants immediately." This is not a joke. "We need a pilot right now." The cabin erupted in worried murmurs. A pilot? Why would they need another pilot? What was happening in the cockpit? Maya saw passengers looking at each other with growing fear. The kind of fear that spreads through a crowd when they realize something is seriously wrong. Jessica, the flight attendant who had commented on Maya's teddy bear earlier, came rushing down the aisle. "Is anyone here a pilot? Any kind of pilot? Please, if you have flight experience, we need you in the cockpit now." An elderly man 3 rows ahead stood up. "I have a private pilot's license, single engine, but I haven't flown in 10 years. "Come with me," Jessica said urgently, grabbing his arm. "Anything helps." Maya watched the old man stumble toward the front of the plane, clearly terrified. She knew what was happening even before anyone explained it. Both pilots must be incapacitated somehow. Food poisoning maybe, or heart attacks. It didn't matter what caused it. What mattered was that a Boeing 777 with 200 passengers was flying at 37,000 feet, with no one qualified to fly it. And a private pilot who hadn't flown in a decade wasn't going to be able to land it safely. "Grandma," Maya said quietly, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I need to go up there." Ruth grabbed her hand tightly. "Maya, no. You know what will happen. They won't believe you. They'll think you're a confused child. It will make everything worse." "But Grandma, I'm the only one who can actually fly this plane," Maya said with the absolute certainty of someone who knew exactly what she was capable of. "That man can't land a 737. He'll kill everyone trying. I have to help." "They won't let you anywhere near the cockpit," Ruth said, her eyes filled with fear and love. "You're 9 years old, sweetheart. They'll never believe you." Maya looked at her grandmother with eyes that seemed far older than 9 years. "Then I have to make them believe me." She pulled free from Ruth's grip and started moving toward the front of the plane, pushing past confused passengers. She heard her grandmother calling after her, but she didn't stop. She reached the front galley where flight attendants were gathered in urgent conversation with the elderly private pilot. The doctor was there too, looking grim. "Both pilots are unconscious," the doctor was saying in a low voice. "Some kind of severe food poisoning, I think. They're both vomiting and can't stay conscious. They need a hospital immediately." "Can he fly the plane?" Jessica asked, gesturing at the elderly man whose face was gray with fear. "I don't know how," the man said, his voice shaking. "I fly a Cessna 172, 4 seats, single engine, maybe 90 knots on a good day. This is a Boeing 777. It's not the same thing at all. I don't even know what half the instruments do." "But you're the only pilot we have," another flight attendant said desperately. "I can fly it," Maya said clearly. Everyone turned to stare at her. Jessica's expression went from desperate to confused to almost angry. "Sweetie, this isn't a game. Go back to your seat. We need adults right now." "I'm not playing," Maya said with a calmness that seemed unnatural for a child. "I can fly this aircraft. I'm qualified on the 777. I've logged over 200 hours in this specific type. I can land it safely." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then Jessica shook her head. "Honey, I know you're scared, but making up stories isn't helping. Go back to your grandmother right now." "I'm not making up stories," Maya said, her voice rising slightly. "My name is Maya Johnson. Check with the FAA. Check with the Air Force. I'm telling you the truth. I can fly this plane and I'm the only person on board who actually can. The elderly private pilot looked at her with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Are you serious? How is that possible? You're just a kid. I know it sounds impossible, Maya said, speaking faster now, knowing she had seconds before they dismissed her completely. But I've been flying since I was 6. I'm part of a classified program. They won't talk about it publicly, but it exists. They were testing if children with the right aptitude could be trained as pilots. Turns out we can be. And we can be really good at it because our brains process information faster and we have better reflexes. I'm not supposed to talk about it, but this is an emergency. You need me. This is insane, Jessica said, but there was a note of uncertainty in her voice now. Even if what you're saying is true, we can't let a child fly a commercial aircraft with 200 passengers. It's impossible. It's against every regulation. Those pilots are dying, Maya said bluntly, pointing toward the cockpit. And this man can't land a 777. He knows it, you know it, everyone knows it. So your choices are let me try or let us all crash. Those are your only options right now. The flight attendants looked at each other with growing panic. The doctor spoke up. If what she's saying is even partially true, maybe we should let her try. What's the alternative? The alternative is suicide, the elderly pilot said quietly. I'll be honest with everyone. If I try to land this plane, we're going to die. I can barely fly a Cessna. This is completely beyond my abilities. Jessica made a decision. I need to talk to someone on the ground. Air traffic control, the airline, someone. We can't make this decision alone. She grabbed the intercom phone and started speaking urgently to someone on the ground, explaining the impossible situation. Maya waited patiently, knowing this was her only chance. Behind her, she heard her grandmother Ruth pushing through the crowd of concerned passengers who had gathered. Maya, sweetheart, are you sure about this? I'm sure, Grandma, Maya said, turning to hug her. You know what I can do. You've always known. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted you to have a normal childhood. You're so young. You shouldn't have to do this. But I can do this, Maya said gently, so I have to. That's what Captain always says. If you can help, you must help. Jessica hung up the phone, her face pale. They want to talk to you directly. The FAA has someone on the line who knows about your program. They need to verify who you are. Maya took the phone. This is Maya Johnson. Authorization code Charlie Delta 79 Tango. A male voice on the other end responded immediately. Maya, this is Colonel Stevens. I'm your program director. Can you confirm your training status? Current and qualified on multiple aircraft types, including the Boeing 777, Maya said crisply. 212 hours logged on type. Last flight simulator session was 3 weeks ago. Emergency procedures current. I can fly this aircraft, sir. There was a pause. Maya, this isn't a simulator. This is real. With real passengers, real consequences. Are you absolutely certain you can handle this? Yes, sir, Maya said without hesitation. Permission to take the controls? Another pause, longer this time. Maya could hear voices arguing in the background on the other end of the line. Finally, Colonel Stevens spoke again. Permission granted. The flight attendants will give you access to the cockpit. Maya will be with you every step of the way on the radio. You're not alone. Now go save those people. Yes, sir, Maya said and handed the phone back to Jessica. They're authorizing me to fly. We need to move the pilots out of the cockpit and get me in there immediately. Every second counts. The flight attendants moved with new purpose, no longer questioning, just acting. They opened the cockpit door, and Maya got her first look at the disaster inside. Both pilots were slumped in their seats unconscious, and there was vomit everywhere. The smell was terrible. The autopilot was engaged, but the aircraft needed human intervention for landing, for dealing with emergencies, for making decisions that computers couldn't make. Get them out and get them medical attention, Maya said, her voice suddenly carrying an authority that made the adults obey without question. I need this space clear. The doctor and the elderly private pilot helped drag the unconscious pilots out of their seats and into the cabin. Maya climbed into the captain's seat on the left side, and her feet barely reached the rudder pedals. She was so small that she could barely see over the instrument panel properly. I need cushions, she said, and something to extend the pedals if possible. Jessica ran to get pillows from first class, stacking them behind Maya's back and under her to raise her up. It wasn't perfect, but it would work. Maya's hands found the controls like they were extensions of her own body. The yoke, the throttles, the various switches and instruments. Everything was exactly where it should be. She took a deep breath and spoke into the radio headset. "Ground control, this is Flight 451. I have the aircraft. Both original pilots are incapacitated. I'm taking control now." "Roger, Flight 451, we copy." "Maya, we have every resource available working with you. What's your current status?" Maya scanned the instruments quickly, her trained mind processing information that would overwhelm most adults. "Currently at flight level 370, autopilot. Engaged, all systems showing normal. Fuel state is good for approximately 2 more hours. I'll need vectors to the nearest suitable airport for emergency landing. We're working on that now. JFK is still 2 hours out. We're looking at alternatives closer to your position." Maya was already ahead of them. "Pittsburgh is 40 minutes away. Weather?" There was surprise in the controller's voice. "How did you—" "Yes, Pittsburgh has good weather. Clear skies, light winds. We can divert you there. Request immediate clearance to begin descent and diversion to Pittsburgh," Maya said calmly. "I'll need emergency equipment standing by. 2 pilots need immediate medical attention. Clearance granted, Flight 451. Descend and maintain flight level 280. Turn right heading 090. We'll vector you toward Pittsburgh." Maya's small hands moved over the controls with practiced confidence. She disconnected the autopilot, feeling the aircraft respond to her touch. She reduced power slightly and pushed the yoke forward, beginning a smooth descent. She rolled the aircraft into a gentle right turn, watching the heading indicator swing to the new course. Behind her in the cockpit doorway, Jessica and several other flight attendants were watching with expressions of shock and awe. Ruth had pushed her way into the cockpit too, tears streaming down her face as she watched her granddaughter do something that should have been impossible. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your new pilot speaking," Maya said into the passenger address system, her young voice startling everyone on board. "My name is Maya Johnson. I know this is unusual, but both of your original pilots are sick and I'm taking over. I'm a qualified pilot and I'm going to land this aircraft safely in Pittsburgh. Please remain calm and follow all instructions from the flight attendants. We'll be on the ground in about 40 minutes. The cabin erupted in confused voices. A 9-year-old girl was flying the plane? It was impossible, insane, a nightmare. But the flight attendants moved through the cabin reassuring passengers, explaining that Maya was part of a special program, that she really was qualified, that everything was going to be okay. Maya blocked out all the noise and focused on flying. This was what she had trained for, what she had been born to do. Her hands were steady on the controls, her mind clear and focused. She communicated with air traffic control in the calm professional voice of an experienced pilot, acknowledging instructions, reporting her position, requesting guidance when she needed it. The descent continued smoothly. Maya configured the aircraft for landing, extending flaps and lowering the landing gear at the appropriate times. She could see the lights of Pittsburgh ahead now, the airport runway lights like a beacon in the darkness. Air traffic control was giving her perfect vectors, setting her up for a straight-in approach. "Flight 451, you're cleared to land runway 28 right. Wind 270 at 8 knots. Emergency equipment is in position." "Cleared to land 28 right, Flight 451, Maya acknowledged. Her heart was pounding now, but her hands were steady. This was it, the moment that would determine if she really could do this or if she had been fooling herself all along. She crossed the runway threshold at exactly the right altitude and airspeed. She pulled back smoothly on the yoke, flaring the aircraft, and the main landing gear touched down with barely a bump. She deployed the thrust reversers and applied the brakes smoothly, bringing the massive aircraft to a controlled stop on the runway. "Flight 451, welcome to Pittsburgh." That was a beautiful landing. "Emergency crews are approaching now." Maya set the parking brake and finally allowed herself to relax. Her whole body was shaking with adrenaline, but she had done it. She had actually done it. 200 passengers were safe because a 9-year-old girl had refused to give up. The cockpit filled with flight attendants and passengers who had pushed forward to see, all of them crying and laughing and trying to thank her. Ruth wrapped her arms around Maya, holding her tight.
"I'm so proud of you, baby."
So incredibly proud. Emergency personnel rushed aboard to help the sick pilots. Paramedics checked Maya over too, making sure she was okay. News crews were already gathering outside, having heard the impossible story. A 9-year-old girl had landed a commercial airliner and saved 200 lives. Colonel Stevens arrived at the airport an hour later, along with several other officials from Maya's secret program. He found her sitting in the terminal with Ruth, surrounded by grateful passengers who kept thanking her, taking photos with her, crying with relief. "Maya," he said quietly, "we need to talk about what happens next. Your program was classified. Now the whole world knows about you." Maya looked up at him with those serious eyes that had always seemed too old for her face. "I know, sir, but I couldn't let them die." "I had to help." Stephen smiled and put his hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing. Always. We'll figure out the rest." The media storm that followed was unprecedented. The story of the 9-year-old pilot who saved 200 lives became international news. People debated whether children should be trained as pilots. The secret program was exposed and eventually shut down under public pressure. Maya became famous whether she wanted to be or not. But she never regretted what she did that night. She had saved lives. She had proven that age doesn't determine courage or capability, and she had shown the world that sometimes the most unlikely hero is exactly what you need. Years later, when Maya became the youngest commercial airline pilot in history at age 21, reporters would ask her about that night. She always gave the same answer. "I did what any pilot would do. I flew the plane and brought everyone home safely. That's the job. That's always been the job." And in her office, on a shelf next to her certificates and licenses, sat an old worn teddy bear named Captain, a reminder of the night a 9-year-old girl proved that heroes come in all sizes, and that courage isn't about age or size or what people expect. It's about doing what's right when it matters most, no matter how impossible it seems.